Dr. Will Tuttle is author of the international bestseller, The World Peace Diet, published in 18 languages, a recipient of the Courage of Conscience Award and the Empty Cages Prize. He is also the author of two more recent best-selling books, Food for Freedom and The World Peace Way, as well as several other books on spirituality, intuition, and social justice. A vegan since 1980 and former Zen monk, he is featured in a number of documentary films and is the creator of several online wellness and advocacy programs. The co founder of the Worldwide Prayer Circle for Animals, he is a frequent radio, television, and online presenter. With his spouse Madeleine, a Swiss visionary artist, he has delivered thousands of lectures in all 50 states and in 50 countries. We're so happy to have you with us today, Will. Thank you for being here to talk on our speaker series.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm really glad to work together with Forrest. Also on this, we're both comparing notes about living on the road and and all Buddhist practice and veganism. So it all goes together for us pretty well. Great
Yeah,
to
that's
be.
amazing. Thank you, Katie, for the introduction and welcome everyone. Thank you, Dr. Will Tuttle, for joining us today. So we're going to have just kind of a relaxed conversation with Will today, get to know him better and what he's about, and save some time at the end for questions. You've been vegan since 1980, a Zen priest. Wow, that's amazing. Could you talk a little bit about, did you grow up vegan or did you find veganism or Buddhism first? And how did that transpire in your life? Where were you before you became that guy?
Right. Thanks, Forrest. And really delighted that you're with this program and that you're carrying this on. And I worked with Bob Isaacson a lot over the years, and the Dharma Voices for Animals has been, I think, doing tremendous work, like you say, in Southeast Asia. And we talked a lot because I've been over to Taiwan and Vietnam and China and Korea, a lot of these places, and helping to spread the vegan message among the Buddhists over there too, and among, well, non-Buddhists as well, and working with the Buddhists. But how I got into this, a lot of people who are on this already know the story, and maybe some others do too. It's kind of well known. It's in my books, but I'll just briefly say I was born and raised in Concord, Massachusetts, and I didn't know, Episcopalian, I guess, church basically, and eating a lot of meat, dairy products, and eggs like everybody did back in the 1950s. I never really questioned it. And I do have to say, I think that being from Concord did help me because when I started to explore things in college, I remember really connecting with Emerson and Thoreau. I was born in Emerson Hospital and went to Thoreau and Alcott schools and learned to swim in Walden Pond. So the Transcendentalists were a big part of my life growing up, and so I discovered their connection to Asian thought, Buddhism and Vedanta and so forth. And it started me actually uh, practicing meditation when I was only in my late teens, when I was in Colby College in Maine. So I got interested. Mainly, it was during the Vietnam War era. People were questioning things, and but I didn't question the food. In fact, when I was about 7 years old, I asked my mother about the food we were eating, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of meat, dairy, and eggs. And she said, I said, "Does everybody eat this?" And she said, "Yeah, everybody eats this." And then she said, "Well, there are vegetarians." And then she said, "But," I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, don't worry, you're never going to meet one." And she was right. I never met one. I never heard about it again. It was completely off the radar for me. When I was a young teen, I went away to Vermont for several years to a camp where we killed our own animals and things. So I participated in that because I'd gone through at that point 13 years 14 years of the most intense indoctrination we can go through. And I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that God gives us certain animals to eat. They taste good. They don't have a soul. If you don't eat them, you're going to die very quickly of a protein deficiency or a calcium deficiency or some terrible thing. So I was at that age when I wanted to be, really become a man. So I thought, all right, so a man's got to do what a man's got to do, and we've got to be able to kill our own animals if we're going to eat them. But I didn't like doing it. So it was that whole thing of just realizing that this is where animal foods come from. And especially dairy. I think I really, we killed a dairy cow every year. And she was on, we say, the fellow said, well, she's, too old. So we have to use it for meat because we can't use it for milk anymore. And we asked her how old she was, the dairy cow, and he would say she's 5 years old or 6 years old, something right in there. And that's not old. I mean, they would live 25 years, but on any dairy, organic or not, I discovered in the meantime, these animals are killed because they've been kept pregnant and lactating simultaneously, which breaks down the health of any female mammal very quickly. And so they'll be replaced by one of the offspring as a slave on the dairy, and the others are typically all killed. So it's really a very brutal industry, and I got a glimpse into that. And one of the reasons I think that veganism is such an important movement is it's really the liberation not only of animals but of the feminine dimension, which really gets especially harmed in animal agriculture. So, but anyway, so I went away to college. I started questioning things. I started reading Thoreau and Emerson. That led to reading his books on Zen, doing yoga, and then eventually decided when I talked to my parents about spirituality and cosmic consciousness and all of this, they thought, well, how are you going to do that? What's the plan? And I was raised to take over my father's newspaper business, and that's been a great background, just the journalism and just realizing that the media is not to be trusted. I know from the inside, and that's helped me a lot, I think, in activism. But I talked to my younger brother Ed about the whole idea of attaining a higher level of consciousness, and we both agreed that that was the most important thing to do. And when we thought about how we could actually do it, we realized there's only one sure way to attain cosmic consciousness when it's 1975 and you're on the East Coast, and that would be to go to California. So we decided to do that, and we left home in September of 1975 and walked down the driveway of our little house there in Concord. And I remember I have some fresh baked cookies from my mother in the backpack. My father gave us his blessing. He actually quoted Thoreau and said, "Every man must march to the beat of the drum that he hears. If that's what you want to do, then." So we did, but we didn't drive. We thought we would walk, and we thought we would walk all the way to California with no money. That was like the sadhus of India, just meditate, because we had discovered Ramana Maharshi's teachings, and we had only two books with us. One was Ramana Maharshi's, a book on Ramana Maharshi's teaching of self-inquiry, to basically ask, who am I? Over and over again, and go deeper and deeper with that question. So we were doing that thousands of times a day, just walking and not worrying about food. Figured it would get taken care of if we focused on the spiritual path. And Shankara's book, The Crest Tool of Discrimination, another great book on non-dual spiritual teachings. So that's what we did, and we worked our way west, and we got as far as Buffalo. And it was after maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, and it was really freezing. I mean, it was October in Buffalo, so we decided to head south and forget the California thing. And we just walked down through upstate New York, Pennsylvania, into West Virginia, and down across West Virginia into Kentucky on little tiny backcountry roads, staying with really poor people a lot. And somehow they fed us, and we got along, and we would walk about 20 miles a day on these little roads and usually sleep on the floor of churches. And we would eat whatever we could get. We were not vegetarians by any means. When you don't have any money, we would eat what we could get. And we ended up getting through Kentucky and eastern Kentucky and through Appalachia and then down into Tennessee. And when we got to Tennessee, we heard about the farm. And so we went to the farm, which was south of Nashville. It was the largest hippie commune in the world in 1975 when we got there at the end of the year. And they were all vegans, actually, but no one knew the word vegan. They said we're vegetarians, but they didn't eat meat or dairy or eggs or even honey. So that was really interesting, because they were thriving. They had about 200 children that were born on the farm. They were all vegan from birth. They were doing great. So we just realized, gosh, we don't need to eat meat, dairy, and eggs. And I asked why they were doing it. And they said two main reasons. One is the starvation of human beings, because most of the food we're growing, we're feeding to animals instead of feeding it to hungry people. And the other reason was because of the cruelty. And the fellow I was talking to explained to me about the hyper-confinement of these animals and the routine mutilation and terrible treatment, just a horrible violence. So it was kind of like this pulling back the curtain and really seeing the terrible violence and abuse and waste and destruction of the animal agriculture industry, which is really the core of our society, as I now understand better. And at the same time, having this wonderful opportunity of none of that. We were all eating together every day, meals that were totally plant-based, and a lot of it was grown right there on the farm, and it was all cooperative and not a community. And they were all basically studying Zen. It was Stephen Gaskin, Ina May, they were the founders. Basically, they had started their Monday night class in San Francisco. Stephen was a student of Suzuki Roshi. Everybody was reading the new book that just came out, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. That was the great book that everybody was reading together. And so I just sort of dived into Zen, especially since the farm was so focused on Zen. And we stayed there for a while, but we felt there was too much karma yoga. We wanted to do more just meditation. And we ended up walking down south, farther south to Huntsville. And in Huntsville, we had heard at the farm that there was a Zen center there. And we went to the Zen center. We just went to the Zen center, and they welcomed us. And one of the guys that had a room there gave us a room in the Zen center. It was a Korean Zen center under the leadership of Sokyung Bosunim from South Korea. And so we lived there for quite a few months. I think it was, most of that year, till the end of the year. And it was fantastic. I mean, we could meditate from 6 o'clock in the morning till like 9 o'clock at night, and we didn't have to do anything else. We just meditated. My grandmother was sending us $10 a week, which somehow covered our food. And we went to all the classes and teachings and so forth, and it was really a very interesting experience. When we were at the farm, this interesting thing had happened. We were after one of the Sunday morning gatherings where everybody meditated together. Everybody had left, and we were alone in the room where that had happened. And so we were just sitting alone in this big room, looking out into the room. And I remember it was so vivid. It was so unusual thing, but like the room started shimmering, and we could feel like there was some beings that were in the room that we couldn't see, but they were there. And I said to Ed, there's beings in here. And he said, I know, you're right. I can feel them. And so I felt this presence coming closer and closer, and then kind of touching me right here. And then it all kind of just disappeared, and it was just a regular old room again. And then about 5 minutes later, the door opened, and two people walked in, a really tall guy, and he said, my name is Big John, and a woman, and he said, this is my wife, and we just got married. We're from Huntsville, Alabama. He didn't even say, but I figured out later it's in Alabama. And he said, we just got married, and we were on our way to our honeymoon in Florida, and I just heard this message so strongly that we have to go to the farm up in Tennessee. And I said, sorry, honey, I'm getting this message. We got to go in the opposite direction for a little while. And so they came up. He said, I think I'm supposed to see you boys, for some reason. And so he put his hand on my head, and he kind of did this reading, and I felt all this energy. It was really quite profound. And he said, I see a man with a staff, and he will be spiritual sustenance for you. And he said a few other things. He said, I see a woman also who will be a partner, something like that. And then we talked a little bit, and he told us about this Zen center in Huntsville where he lived. And then he left, and they went on their honeymoon. And so after a few weeks, we thought, let's go to that Zen center. And so after being there and practicing every day for quite a few months and doing all these things and fasting, we got into fasting and meditating. I mean, we really were so gung-ho to just attain enlightenment. That's all we want. That's all that mattered. And then the people said, the Zen master is coming. The disciple of Sokyung Bosunim, he's an American Zen master. He's coming. He lives in Oakland. He's coming to do a retreat, and his name is Zen Master Donald Gilbert. and they showed us a picture of him, and there's this old man, and he was standing there holding a staff. And we said, "Oh my gosh, here he is, the man with a staff is coming." And so he came, and basically that was it. He really became my spiritual teacher. And we studied with one of his students in Atlanta for a few years. And then we came out to San Francisco. I lived in a Tibetan Buddhist center first for about 2 years, 79, 1980. I really got heavily involved with the Kagyu Doden Kunchab, which is a Kagyu lineage, Lama Lodru and Kalu Rinpoche Center, and translated one of the books from Tibetan into English. But then Zen Master Donald Gilbert lived in Oakland, and I just bought a house across the street from him and started studying with him. And there was a center down in Carmel, Sambosa, that we used to go to every weekend. So I studied really with him, and then at one point I decided to go to South Korea, and I lived in Sangwangsa, shaved my head, became a Zen Buddhist monk. That was in 1984, and I became a vegan in 1980. So the first 5 years, from 75 to 80, I was still eating some dairy, but then I made the connection in 1980. So I've been a vegan for 45 years. And it's just been I just have to say it's just been a fantastic adventure, this whole thing. But basically, in Korea, the neat thing was that when I was in South Korea at the Zen monastery Sangwangsa, I I realized that they had been practicing vegan living for 750 years, since the 1200s, when it was founded. There was no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, no silk, no leather, no killing insects or anything. The shoes were non-leather. Everything was like vegan, and so that really helped to cement the whole thing at a deeper level for me. That it's not just a sort of veganism isn't this option that you can do it if you want or whatever. I realize it's our true nature, and that when we eat animal foods, we're being hijacked off into some violent way of living where it's going to be very difficult to attain awakening, to create a society that actually manifests harmony and peace and justice and equality and so forth. Our way of eating and living and how we treat those who are weaker than us, that's the core teaching in all the world religions, but especially in the Buddhist tradition. So I eventually came back and started teaching college in the San Francisco Bay Area. I got my PhD at Berkeley. I taught it at the Academy of Art College in San Francisco, and Chabot College and Las Positas College, and courses in comparative religion and philosophy and epistemology and all these different courses. And then eventually just left that because I loved teaching, but I felt drawn to something more free. So I lived in a 1971 Volkswagen bus for several years, traveling the whole country, giving workshops on developing spiritual intuition and concerts because I played the piano. So I realized I could make a living selling cassettes. It really went great. And so the story went on, but I'll kind of wrap it up. Maybe the last thing I'll say is I ended up going over during that time on a walk. It was called the Global Walk for a Livable World, people walking across the United States from LA to New York City for the environment. So I went on a lot of that walk too. And then I flew over to the Soviet Union, it was back then, to try to create peace. It was called citizen diplomacy, try to make citizen to citizen connection. And so I did a lot of concerts and talks over in the Soviet Union, in what is today Russia, in Armenia, and also Ukraine. And during that time, I also traveled around Europe, and I met my who became my wife, Madeleine, in Switzerland in 1990. And so we've been now together for 33 years. And then we got an RV, so we lived on the road in a big fifth wheel trailer for 17 years with no house, just traveling, giving lectures. And it was during that time I wrote the World Peace Diet. I just realized, that veganism, we've got to understand it, we've got to practice it, we've got to live it. But it's always, for me, been a spiritual practice based on the ancient teachings of wisdom from the Buddhist tradition primarily, but I think in all the world religions, of compassion for other living beings. So that's how I got into all this.
Yeah, that's what an incredible story and a rich life, man. You've covered so much of the world and just the story of walking from your home. I mean, wow, that's what a journey you have been on. And yeah, I want to talk more about that. So you mentioned you just started to mention the World Peace Diet and the tour you're on now. Could you share a little bit about how the I mean, maybe how the book, how you were inspired to write the book? I think we
Right.
probably know just from that, but also the tour that you're on now. And we
Okay.
do, so Will, I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. So maybe around
Okay.
9:50, we'll wrap up,
Okay.
9:50 Pacific time. So um, I want to ask this question
Good.
and then also some challenges and some positive and some challenges. Save time for those questions too. So, but yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
how did the book? I sounds like you have more than one book, but how did your first book come about? And then the tour you're on now, I think that's interesting because I think no matter, well, maybe not the entire. I looked at your calendar, I was like, wow, this guy is a machine. You're covering a lot of terrain. You were in Pismo Beach and then came through New Mexico and now you're in Florida. Like all across the East Coast. So he could be coming to a town near you if you're listening to this. So I want you to talk about your tour as well.
Right. Yeah. Just briefly, we were living on the road. We were speaking every Sunday at a Unity church. We work mainly through Unity churches, also Unitarian churches. There's another movement called the Center for Spiritual Living. We spoke at them, but basically they're denominations that are open to non-Western spiritual paths and meditation and so forth. And it really worked great. I would speak on Sunday morning, do workshops on developing intuition. My PhD from UC Berkeley focused on educating spiritual intuition in adults and do concerts and so forth. So, and we did some retreats and things. And during that time, I just felt more and more that I've got to bring the vegan message into these churches. And so I would do that on Sunday morning, and people did not like it for the most part. They were not happy. Like I would have ministers say, "You can come here and speak on Sunday morning, but don't say anything about vegetarianism, and don't say anything about animals. We don't want to hear about that. To speak about intuition and spirituality, but leave the animals out of it." And so I just felt like I've got to get this teaching into the mainstream more. And so I remember also at the same time realizing that what veganism is much bigger than most people realize. There's these three main kind of branches that most people hang on to. One of them, it's either people go vegan either for their health, it's better for your health, or for the animals, it's all this violence towards animals, or for the environment, right? There's these three big things. And so those are great, those are important, but I realized through my inner research and a lot of the outer research that I had been doing, getting my PhD at Berkeley and teaching college for all those years and all that, that there's way more to it. That there's the anthropological, sociological, psychological, and as well as the economic and political and spiritual dimensions of this, and that animal agriculture is the template for our entire society, our mentality of domination and exploitation of animals. It plays out in our treatment of everyone, of women, of people who are less, who are more vulnerable, less privileged, and so forth. And so I thought, I remember saying to Madeleine, someone's going to write a book that'll give this big picture of the consequences of animal agriculture, and I can't wait to read it. And that happened. That went on for a year or two, and then Madeleine suggested that maybe I should be the one to write that book, and I realized, I guess I am. I'm the one. All right. So I ended up spending 5 years writing that book, and it was in the good old. We lived in an RV. I bought a tent. I just would sit in that tent, and I wrote every word out, by hand. And a lot of it I did in the summers when Madeleine was in Switzerland. I would just go up into the mountains and sit in a tent and just write. And so the book really came out of nature and out of my meditation practice. And when it eventually came out, the basic idea in the World Peace Diet was to take animal agriculture and, the idea is that everyone agrees that it's a problem to abuse animals, right? Everyone agrees. Even non-vegans agree. But we have this hierarchy of problems. We have we've got war, we've got hunger, we've got environmental devastation, we've got conflict of various kinds and injustice, all these things. And then on that list somewhere, we have human abuse of animals, but that's down on the list. And people say, yeah, we'll get to that. But first, we've got to solve all these other problems. Then we'll get to that. So I wrote the World Peace Diet partly to take that human abuse of animals and move it from the bottom of the list to the top of the list. Because I realized that if we don't address our killing and torturing and maiming and abusing of billions of animals every day, if you include marine animals, we'll never solve any of the other ones because we're eating that, we're causing that. That's the foundation, really, of everything. So I thought someone has to write a book that'll just move that basic human activity of eating and our treatment of nature and animals up to the top. So I wrote it, and then the book really took off. And I wasn't really banking on that at the time, but it was published by Lantern Books in New York, and it became, they have, I don't know, 300 books out, and it's the number one bestseller of all time of their books, and it became a number one Amazon bestseller, and it's been translated now into 18 languages by volunteers in countries all over the world. And then we started getting invited all over Asia and Europe and South America and Australia, New Zealand, everywhere, the Middle East, Africa, and so forth. And it was fantastic. For probably 15 years, we just traveled the world and the United States, over 50 countries in all 50 states, just sharing the vegan message. Really interesting. I have so many stories I could tell about China and Southeast Asia, Korea. I mean, really interesting things. But all of that was just kind of gave me the feeling that veganism is really going to happen. It's growing. It's it's just booming. It's really been tremendous to connect with so many people, and it led to writing other books as well. We have a book out that I'm the editor of called Buddhism and Veganism, and that really goes deeply into the Buddhist teachings. And I'm the editor, but I got authors that are Buddhist and vegan from all over the world, mainly a lot from Asia as well that I had met, to kind of show how it all fits together, the whole thing. So that was how it all happened. And so but we lived on the road that whole time. And then eventually in 2012, at the end of 2012, we decided to get a house. So we bought a house in Northern California in Lake County, which is way out in the middle of nowhere. And we planted a food forest, and we grow food now. And that's kind of one of our main activities. And every year, for about half the year, we go on the road and do a tour. And we did it for years in our big fifth wheel trailer, but when COVID happened, we downsized. So now every year we go for about 5 months in a little micro van that we live in. And so the whole idea for me is to just bring this message in a way to people in a grassroots way and try to support local groups. That's really one of the main focuses of our mission. My wife Madeleine and I is to help veganize the world by supporting local groups. And so we've spoken at so many different veg fests, all over the United States, all over the world, in Greece and Czechoslovakia and India, and everywhere, and then local vegan meetup groups, just come out. We just gave talks coming across here at Vegan Thanksgivings in Phoenix and lots of different places. So that's the basic idea, is just to kind of keep encouraging and invigorating local groups. So it's a lot like what you're doing, I think, in many ways for us. You're working with local Buddhist groups. We work with local vegan groups, or anything, social justice, yoga, whoever is open to this idea, just help spread the message, and to do it in a face-to-face kind of way. I like really seeing people face-to-face, and so that's what we've been doing. That's what this tour is about.
That's amazing. And anyone, you could check out Will's website. What is it Dr. Will Tuttle?
Yeah, it's either, well, there's two. It's either willtuttle.com or worldpeacediet.com. That's
Yeah,
kind of the main one,
yeah, those are,
worldpeacediet.com, but they both go to the same place.
yeah, check out his calendar. I was like, wow, this man is on the move. That's amazing. So thank you for carrying that message. It needs to be heard. So in the last 10 minutes or so before, because I do want to have some time for questions and answers, because I know people want to ask you questions and participate. Um, could you share in your time as a vegan on this journey inspiration for us? Because it can be overwhelming some days. It's so much suffering in the world, and it's really kind of, some days I just feel so bogged down with what's just happening to animals. Can you share like what you've seen? I know, for example, Veganuary went from like I think 100,000 people 5 years ago to like I
Hmm.
want to say 8 million people last year. I can't I'm blanking on the number, but it's
Yeah.
dramatically grow. I know veganism is becoming more and more out there. So could you share like what you've seen in some positive ways and the reality like we do face challenges. There is like you mentioned, the brainwashing, the propaganda, the what challenges do we face and how do you see us moving forward to, as you said, to veganize the world?
Right. Well, it's like, what can I say? I've been an activist. I was an activist from the very beginning. That's just my nature. I couldn't just go I went as a vegetarian even. I was trying to get people to go vegetarian, way back in the 70s. And then I became a vegan and so I've been a vegan activist for 45 years. And so I've gone somewhat from being more trying to change people. I've gotten away from that more to just planting the idea of planting seeds in their consciousness because I realize that if I try to change people, they just really resist. If I come across like I'm right, you're wrong. The way I'm doing it is right. What you're doing is wrong. You should be more like me. People like, a healthy response to that is to fight back. So the Buddhist teaching is so precious, and it really is about personal transformation. It's like changing the world through changing yourself. And so I kind of differ, I guess, in a lot of ways from a lot of the bigger groups that are trying to change the world. I think, or to see vegan as something to market. To me, it's not a commodity to market. It's more an inner transformation to live, and then it will spread, I think, much faster if we work on ourselves to try to be more vegan in our relationships with each other. This infighting among vegans or blaming and shaming and criticizing of each other or of non-vegan people. So to me, it's really a spiritual path. And I have such a strong feeling for the transiency of human life. We're just here for a short time. And then of course, I really appreciate that in Buddhism, there's the idea of rebirth. And we come back again and try again and make progress with every lifetime. So I have a big view. I have like, we're born as humans, we're born as, different genders and races and all kinds of things. And we're consciousness. We're infinite, eternal consciousness that was never born and will never die. We're not this body. We have to really have that as the ultimate, we have to have that as the foundation of our activism. And from my point of view. So for me, I see, I've seen a lot of progress. I mean, it's true. I mean, in the golden days, like I would say from 2008 maybe to 2020, as we traveled and we just saw massive increases in the number of vegan restaurants. We went to, like doing a veg fest in different cities, and it would go from 500 people to 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000. It was just booming in so many cities all over the world. And I got to speak to hundreds of thousands. When we spoke in China, we would always have at least 1,000 people in the audience. And when we spoke in Taiwan, Taiwan is the most vegan country in the world. The Buddhist teachings in Taiwan are so strong that veganism is huge in Taiwan. I mean, it's massive. I gave a lecture to over 2,500 people came, or I think it was 2,200 people came to a lecture I gave in Taiwan. They're really into it, and they have vegan schools and vegan hospitals, and I mean, it's really inspiring to go to some of these places and see how far ahead of us they are. And when COVID came, it was like a body blow, I think, to the whole movement and to our society in general. And so now we're kind of, I think, rebuilding, trying to help keep things going. But I think in general, our life is brief. We come to this planet. We get totally indoctrinated and brainwashed about everything. And then if we somehow get our head up above all of that and we sort of figure out kind of what's going on here a little bit, and we go vegan, and then we actually begin to share this message, and just do our best to do that, to live it and to do it, then we will have lived our life well, and I don't know how it's going to end up. I don't know how it's all going to go, but it's just to do our best, and every day wake up with a feeling of gratitude for another day, another opportunity to contribute to the healing and the solution of these problems by bringing our own life into alignment with the Buddhist teachings. To me, that's a win. We can all do that and not spend so much time criticizing each other for our strategies and ways of doing it and different styles. Just really focus on being, living, embodying the teachings of kindness and compassion. And it's hard to get people to change. It is. And I think the movement is really challenged by being infiltrated by forces, like every social justice movement is infiltrated and harmed. They got to stop it. So ours is the same way. And so to just stay pure in our motivation and in our hearts, and just living this message as best we can. I think that's it. We will live our life well. Life goes by quickly. Maybe we get 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 decades, but they go by quickly and then we're gone. And so while we're here, to just do our best, and if everyone does that, we'll make progress. And it's a long-term thing. I mean, think of the tremendous. I think what I realize is, like, the whole vegan movement came out of the Buddhism, basically out of the Chinese Buddhist movement. It spread. If you really trace it carefully, and I can talk about that. There's so many things to talk about, but it was a spiritual transformation that is at the core of this. And the main problem I see is a lot of people who identify as vegans they don't like spirituality. They think, well, I don't like churches. I don't want to talk about that. I'm a materialist. And I think spirituality is the key. It's the understanding that there's one life living through all of us. We're not this fundamentally separate self that we have to compete and try to change and do and make it happen. We are one life living through all of us, and see that in each other. That's what veganism is. It's kindness and compassion for all living beings, no matter what, and living that. And it's not something you can market. It's something we can embody. And as we embody it, then it organically becomes an unstoppable force, to the degree that we are authentically making an effort to transform ourselves, and not saying, well, I got to change you and then we'll have a better world. I mean, that goes nowhere. That goes nowhere. And that's still where a lot of the vegan movement is stuck, unfortunately, I think. That's the thing, you're talking. And I think, the underlying dynamic that's sort of unavoidable is when someone sees that you're a vegan and they're not a vegan, and we're a tiny minority. I mean, I just read yesterday that according to the latest Gallup poll, only 1% of the U.S. population is vegan. It's kind of shrunk, and back to 1%, according to the poll, if it's true or not. But anyway, but the point is, we're a small minority, and the underlying dynamic is that we're better somehow. Like, we're more compassionate, we're more conscientious, we're more caring. And so there's this natural dislike in some ways of that, a natural sense of defensiveness. So I think it's really important, which I've discovered over the years, is that we never talk about that person, like you should, or you just only use I statements. And when we talk just about ourselves, it doesn't cause the natural defensiveness to come up. So I think, quite honestly, like, the number one sort of best one-liner that we can sort of adapt to our own situation is this: I'm so happy that I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods all those years that I did was because I was just following orders. I'm not doing it anymore, and it's fantastic. And that's it. Don't say anything more. Just that one line, that one thought is amazingly transformational, because that's true for everyone. The only reason anyone, when we walk down the street and we see people eating meat, dairy, and eggs, the only reason anyone does it is because we're following orders. We're eating the foods that our parents and teachers and friends and neighbors and relatives and doctors and everybody said, this is what you eat. We're tribal, so we eat the tribe's food. And so when we just say, gosh, I realized I was just following orders, and I realized those orders weren't not in my best interest, or you can tailor it. If you know the person really cares about the environment, you can say, I realized it wasn't good for the environment or whatever. But you just say that it was something that I discovered myself, and I'm not doing it anymore, and it's great. That takes all the weight off of them. It's just something I discovered, and it's really important, I think, to stay positive, to say how great it is, and then without any inkling that you're trying to change them. Because if they smell a little fragrance of that, I want to change you, then they're gonna pull back. Just say it with love, and like the Bhagavad Gita says, the Buddhist teachings say, don't be attached to the fruit of our actions. We all want to have it work, right? We say, I want to make it work. I want to change people. No, just plant the seed, let go. And the beautiful thing is that every human being has a heart of empathy. It's in there. We've all suffered. We know what it's like to suffer. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to inflict suffering on other living beings. So, and nobody wants to just follow orders that I think everybody knows they're not in our best interest. It's not good for our health or the environment or the whole thing. So when we just come out in a sense and say, I'm so glad, it's great, then we plant a seed, and that person's own wisdom and compassion will water that seed. And if we do it without expecting any change, then very, very, very well, they will go vegan, and they won't even remember that we said it. That if you really do it well, you'll get no credit, but you will have planted the seed. And the other thing is that I think is important to remember is that very often someone has to hear the vegan message X number of times, maybe like 50 times. So and then on the 51st time, they say, all right, I'm going to go vegan. I'm going to try it. And we come along, we plant seed number 23 or 37 or whatever. We think, oh, it didn't make any difference, but it all contributes. So the whole idea is to just plant the seed with love. The key thing is love, that we do it not to change them, not to be right, not to put them down, but to just be loving. People are wounded. Anyone who's eating animal foods is wounded. And we know when someone's wounded, we don't kick them and spit on them and yell at them and tell them they should be different. We love them. It's about love. Veganism is just loving kindness. And it has to be for humans as much as for cows and pigs and chickens, who are much less likely to criticize us on Facebook and so forth. I mean, it's a lot easier to love cows and pigs and chickens than it is to love other human beings. So I think this is the fundamental teaching that we have to embrace and understand, is that veganism is simply speaking our truth and doing it with love and letting go.
That was a great answer. What a powerful message. That was really good. Yeah, I can fall into misanthropy very easily. So
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
it's
But
tough. So, but
and it's important to see the best in others also. That's one of the things I think a lot of people who get misanthropic who are vegans, they start going like, people don't care. I told them how much and they just don't care. I hate these people. They don't. We've got to see the best in others. That's what the Buddha did. He saw the enlightened nature, and when we see that, and we address that in them, that brings out the best in them.
and thank you so much for coming. And may this message be spread out to others, and may we all continue to practice this path with love in our heart and light in our eyes for the benefit of all beings. Uh, Thank you, Will, for coming today, and thank you all for joining us. So,
Thanks to Dharma Voices for Animals for this ministry, which is really the natural extension of the Buddhist teaching. And the Buddhist teachings, the four immeasurables, the four viharas, love, compassion, joy, and peace, this is it. And when we do our best to just cultivate that in our hearts, then we'll know how we should act in certain situations. We have to, I think, use our intuition, our spiritual wisdom, and then the compassion will come through. And we are on the path, as we know in Buddhism, the Bodhisattva path of doing our best for the benefit of all beings. and doing the inner work to attain awakening for the benefit of all beings. That's really the foundational, uh, greatest thing we can do is to awaken our own consciousness and to take time every day to cultivate our consciousness is the most important thing. So thank you all for your kind and loving actions, and may we together go forth and multiply the message for the benefit of all beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
so
Will
much.
Tuttle. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Bow deeply, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much.